Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. This episode is part of the implementation series with focus on guidance on implementing EU-funded projects. Communication and dissemination are obligatory in the majority of EU-funded projects, and hence most of you out there are familiar with the concept of communication and dissemination in both proposals and in the projects. I have invited Czarny and Maëla Barçon from Hanse-Parlament in Hamburg to run through these two elements of project implementation. They are continuously involved in communication and dissemination activities in their project implementation and hence have a lot of experience to share. In this second half of this 2 episode, we move into the dissemination activities when implementing a project. What are they, how do you carry them out, and what should you be aware of? We talk about all the regular stuff, but also reflect on more creative ways to work. Please enjoy. The Grant. On that note, we move into dissemination. Now, a lot of it, as we've been, the basic premise, so to say, baseline for this episode is that we go back and forth between, but now we've been sort of going through the obvious communication parts and mentioning the dissemination elements that you have in them. But now let's move into the dissemination specific that were clear, where the weight is more towards the dissemination part, because it's going to be a 2 episode of this one, but that's fine. Now, if we sort of stick to my sort of rule of thumb that you spread results, clear dissemination activities, that's often in the proposals when you write scientific publications, trainings, target group engagement. So who wanna run with that? Who wanna open it up? Maëla?
Yeah, just thinking out loud now. Yes. Well, first, so if I looked at the grant agreement,
I'm
yes,
with you.
no, I was thinking out loud, and well, we mentioned the website, which is very important for dissemination, of course. Then, well, in the grant agreement, also you have to publish the results on the Erasmus Plus project results platform, if it's an Erasmus Plus project, of course.
Yeah.
And then we talked already about the conferences.
But let's dig a little bit. So let's just take it. So for the website, when you put dissemination material, now we've been talking about how to make it, or that's the communication. But the dissemination part is that you share the results and make that nice. Now we just went through and say, look, don't copy paste what you have in your proposal, right? You have to do it differently. So how can you give an example of how you have how you present how you disseminate, so to say, in the projects that you're involved in on the website?
So for SWLOE, for example, we have this specific section which is called results, and we have everything. We separated also some of the curricula because it was too big, But I think it's very clear. So every result has a name where you can really know what it's about. But then I would say those result videos are maybe the first step, because you have like in 10 minutes, you have an overview of what has been done and the bigger results of the project. So that's what I mentioned before. So having this short videos, I think it's very helpful. And yeah, I think that's it. And the Erasmus Plus platform as well is very important. We just uploaded the results and waiting for feedback for the commission. But
I have a story to tell.
Yeah, hit us.
I have a story to tell, just to show how kind of we would approach the dissemination aspect in Win for SMEs, which which is a year in. So we do have a bit of results coming up soon. Absolutely finalized Train the Trainer with number 1 with all the documentation. But last year, I went to the International Seminar on Mobility and Cooperation Projects in Barcelona. Now, you might ask, well, if you were an employee of Hanse-Parlament, what does Hanse-Parlament have to do with mobility? We don't have too much to do with mobility, but we do have quite a lot to do with cooperation. And even though that was last year, where we had just started off with Win for SMEs, I already presented the Win for SMEs project, the concept, the overview. And there was interest from quite a lot of people because there were institutions like vocational training institutions, of course, educational institutions, which were interested in the mobility aspect, but also on cooperation aspect. There was just a vast array of types of projects introduced there as well. And we got to know representatives of the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, so vocational education and training, the European Commission. We got in touch with them. Now they reached out to us after some time and they said, hey, we'd like to publish a fact sheet. We'd like to publish a fact sheet. We have an initiative called the European Alliance for Apprenticeships, and we'd like to mention Win for SMEs as a best practice. And then we also had a meeting with them just some time ago, and we'll be joining the European Alliance for Apprentices. Mm-hmm. And where am I going with this? Because it was maybe a little bit of a long intro. They have, once again, a knowledge platform. So we do list the results and disseminate them on the specific websites that we have for our projects. But one of the elements of maybe further kind of dissemination is looking for these kind of opportunities where, in this particular case, not only are there newsletters, of course, and LinkedIn groups, so more of the communication aspect, but we do have learning tools. We have online libraries. We have places where we can disseminate the results, the actual results of the project. So this is the story that I wanted to tell about this particular association. Yep. And the other element as well was something that I already mentioned. So the Juven Fresh Thinking Labs. That's also a very good example of dissemination. You see, it was interwoven in the communication aspect. You have a group of specialists and you have a group of people extremely well versed with a vast professional amount of experience in workplace innovation, and they're coming together, under kind of the Juven umbrella of their Fresh Thinking Labs, and that's where we are as well, and that's where we'll be disseminating our results as well. Mm-hmm. So this is something that, is pure dissemination essentially.
A good example, if you can get yourself results into knowledge platforms related or common, you might, and I know you're well connected within the vocational training world, European level and so on, so connected to Brussels and so on. But if you out there sit within your socio-economic area, connect yourself. There might be partners, but they might not be partners. A commission, your project officer might guide you to where it makes sense, or where you would be able to have a place where they have results from other places or the same kind of knowledge that they try to share, platform hubs, whatever. So good point.
That's one point, and one more point. I know that we're running low on time.
No, it's okay.
About dissemination and communication with regard to these target groups that we mentioned before, and it's something that also I found out through IAGF, actually, which is Maëla's partners from 3LOE. So when we're specifically talking about vocational education and training, maybe not education and training, but vocations, people working in trades. Yeah. You also need to remember that, and this is not a general comment, but this is it's not a general comment, but you'll see what I mean in one moment. These will not be target groups that will go onto online platforms. These are target groups that will read paper print.
Yeah.
A lot of times. So what you'd like to do maybe is, and IAGF did a fantastic job with this. They actually printed out a booklet about the results of projects and something on vocations in the digital jungle, but it was a printed out book. A lot of business support organizations, chambers of commerce and craft, they will still have printed quarterly or monthly, usually I guess it's quarterly magazines.
Yeah.
And this is a good place to also think about disseminating, because it's not anymore, let's say, it's the traditional way, but it's not the traditional way anymore, let's say, right? What I mean, because the traditional way is online, it's platforms, it's Instagram, it's whatever, but it's the traditional way in the sense that it's paper print. So try to keep that in mind when it comes to disseminating amongst those particular groups.
Yeah, I think come on.
No, I was going to say thank you because you just reminded me of something that I forgot, which is quite important. Writing a book with the results is also very good dissemination. That's what we did for the SWLOE project. That's what you are going to do for the Win for SMEs project, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's very good also because those kind of books, you can also give it to people. If I take the COVID Forum, for example, there are a lot of people coming, but they are coming from one stand to another, and they don't have time maybe to hear during 20 minutes the results of your projects. So they are coming, they are asking you some questions. And a nice way also is to have those books and to give it to people. Because, if they are interested, they can take it home and then they can read it and they are not in a rush. And that's what we did in Lyon. We had those books, those printed books. And I think it was quite a success. People took it and, now they have the results also at home. And the results are presented in different ways than in the deliverables you have. Because it's a book, so everything is connected and you are putting everything together in relation to, to the different activities, results. So I think it's
it's better than a report.
Yes,
better than a report. Now, but I think if we zoom a little bit out here, take the listener in the hand. Now, I think the message that you hear is that you have to adjust your channel to your target group. Where does it make sense? And you probably you would need to, because you wrote something in the proposal, but my best guess is that you did not. You might, if you made a good dissemination part in your proposal, you might have sketched out already how you want to do this. But my best guess is that needs a little meat on the bone. So I would say a good recommendation would be to make a mind mapping session. Brainstorm, put it down on paper, put it down together at the kickoff meeting, maybe make a session or the second meeting, whatever. Put it down, sort of try to get an idea what would be the best. Brainstorm in the group, where do we reach people best and how, with the change we want to make with this specific thing we're working with, because it can be many things. It can be, like Anna said, it can be printed, it can be, unions, if you want to reach of whatever sector branch organizations, their outreach. But it can be, if it's totally different area you're working with, if it's in the technology area, you might want to use a cluster, innovation cluster, or you might want to use, it can be many different things. But you need to find out how you might even make a small survey, put to try to figure out from who you want to reach, ask them, make a small survey, call them, so where do you get your information from? Where would you like these kind of information? Where would you pick it up if we should get it from us? So
yes, and I think flexibility is also very important, because sometimes you have plans, of course, but things are not happening the way they should or they were planned. With the Invade project, for example, we had Twitter first. And we realized it was not, it was not useful because we didn't have followers. So at some point we just said, okay, we won't tweet anymore, but we are going to focus more on LinkedIn because the LinkedIn channel is working and it makes more sense. So I think it's flexibility is also very important. And to be open also for new things throughout the project.
Further on with the notes in this track, but we already talked about it in relation to events. Now, if we mentioned conferences and events and so on, that there would be a dissemination element if you had sort of different sessions where you. So that's an element, yes, but more dissemination clear profile would be the specific workshop or trainings, where you targeted specifically on, say, we have this element, how would you, if it's a training, we have this result, how can you use this in the practice within the socio-economic group we're talking about? Either schools, as you are often working with here, or technology areas, companies. How do you implement this technology, or how can you implement this innovation process in the practice, or whatever? So that's clear, and there this is content. This is what have we done, and then facilitating how do you come across to people with this? That's the dissemination part. How do you best set up a workshop? How do you best set up a training in relation to coming through with them saying, "Oh, this is a good idea. You can work with it like this." You probably need to sit down and geek a little bit in the tech with the content partners on how do we best come across with making them realize how this can change the practice to the better. That's a content exercise. Yeah,
it's a content exercise, and it's a content exercise also with a layer of transnational experience exchange, I would say.
Yeah.
If and we have this as well. We're working on it within one of our projects in Easy Energy. We're meeting up. We're just starting out with this because we're going into a piloting phase, and I want to have our project consortium meet up to talk about how the different solutions are working in every single country, where they see the challenges, and how we can spread the word to the target groups in a more efficient manner based on the initial kind of piloting activities. So I think my first meeting on this is yet to come. It's coming up in March. I think it'll be interesting. I'd like to set up we have another platform, maybe kind of like an online challenges, best practices, how to approach this, who we disseminate it to, etc. And I think that this is something that may come in handy, because this kind of experience exchange is very important when it comes to dissemination as well. I have partners who come up with very creative ideas. I have partners who come up with innovation contests. I have partners who are very excited about taking part in events where you have policy governance, right? This also goes into the dissemination area. And when you talk about it, people take from this, and then they take it further within their partner activities. So that's something also definitely to take into consideration during planning out or maybe tailoring your dissemination strategy.
Mm-hmm. No. What I also have a couple of things in the dissemination corner that are important to cover from a general point of view, since this is the authoritative sort of element. So, scientific publications. Yeah, it's a demand. It's obligatory in Horizon projects to as open science. And the sharing of scientific results. So that element, of course, the research organizations there, they know how to do this. But that's dissemination. That's just to label it here in this as a guideline episode. That's dissemination. You university guys, research people, this. This is about peer-reviewed articles. This is about using your normal channels towards the scientific journals related to where you are publishing or trying to get your results published. But in relation to open science, I have not been involved in this myself, so I can't speak out of experience. But this is about having access that there's open access to your results, and you would probably know that. But if you don't, you would need to ask your coordinator or project officer on how to do it. But have you got any experience with this, Maëla?
My experience, to be honest with you, is quite limited in this area.
Yeah.
We do, just straight off the bat, to be honest about it, we do have a lot of, well, depending on the project, of course, we do have universities, first of all, that are associated with Hanse-Parlament, but also within our projects, which, of course, have a massive amount of expertise in this area. And I know that they do have and publish articles. I then get the link up, and then I can share this, of course. Mm-hmm. But I cannot speak to, unfortunately, any massive details. We do something that Maëla mentioned. We do, at the very end of our certain projects, publish a book. And we do have a call out for publications. So it's usually the university partners that will come up with ideas for these particular articles. I do have one thing that I'd like to share. I can send you the details later on, though. I know that just popped into my head, within the UVIN conference, this is a scientific community, right? I mean, it's a mix. It's a mix of a scientific community together with SMEs, businesses, workplace innovation experts. They have an open call soon for scientific articles in the area of workplace innovation. So this is kind of how I find these kind of opportunities, right? So what I'll do is I'll, of course, share this with the partner consortium, share it with you as well, Niels, if your listeners will be interested in an open call like this.
On the episode site, I will put a link.
Yeah. And so this is my limited experience that I can speak to in this particular area.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't bring anything either. So I've never worked on a Horizon project. It's exactly what Anna Maria said. For me, it's the same. When you take part, sometimes also in some congress, you can have those activities. So you have to write this paper about a specific topic. Then that's it. Unfortunately I can't add anything relevant in this part.
No, but it's in principle it's about you need to share what you do. Share preprints, technical reports, data sets in open repositories, and you have different channels for that. And again, so it's about ensuring research outputs that they comply with what's called the FAIR principle. So it's findable, accessible, and reusable. And what's the last one? Sorry, let me just see. Findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So those are. But this is something that your research partner, and if you're a research partner university, this is this, and you have people in your university that knows how these things work, how to do this, and your coordinator. And definitely your policy officer will be able to give you some guidance on this. So it's okay. So I wanted to mention in relation to newsletters. And that also goes with some proper social media, sharing things there. So when it comes to dissemination part, you just need to keep a mind on what target groups you approach. So who do you tag, or who do you keep in the flow of sharing these things with? So that's the dissemination part. If you have content in there that you want target groups to have, know what's going on with your, if you have a post on, now we have this and this result, so here on the social media, tag people in newsletters, write about it, and make sure that, or try at least to reach out to get them to subscribe to the newsletter. These groups of multipliers, clusters or associations and so on that are specific to what you do, that can share it within their group and maybe share it in their newsletters or their website. So that's probably the most important thing to say about dissemination in relation to newsletters and social media. we're slowly crabbing ourselves towards finalizing, actually going through what I did put down here: politicians, policy. Yeah, because it's often an element in many funding schemes, not just Horizon, but also Erasmus. So that policy element that there needs to be something that politicians can use of your results, or at least you need to share these things in relation. Sometimes you're even obliged to make policy-related briefs or recommendations, policy recommendations, and so on. So here on the dissemination side, then you need to think about maybe making a policy roundtables, or having, or maybe you have an advisory board, policy advisory board, and then you need to coordinate maybe with your policy officer about sharing your results with the EU bubble or the Commission bubble, or maybe make public consultations, depending on the character of what you do. But have you any experience with this?
The thing that I can say definitely is that that is, of course, a very important aspect. We do have in the Win for SMEs policy framework, we actually have a separate subcategory in the activities about certain centers of, because of course policy differs, right? We have a general policy, we have of course national conditions. So each of the national COVIs will be preparing a short overview of any kind of activities, inspiration that they have done within this area. And this is about reaching out. This is about, as you said, organizing a roundtable, organizing, an event. This is about getting people involved and lobbying for the cause, essentially, to a certain extent. So this is coming up within the Win for SMEs project. And again, interweaving what I mentioned in the communication aspect, governance, admin, policy, together with a little bit of project shine. Choose the events that you go to. Obviously, everybody gets, maybe not obviously actually, but you get so many invites. The event that we have the pleasure and the privilege to go to in Slovenia is a high level event with policy and governance, and this is something that I'm going to use, of course, to present projects, to present initiatives, to talk, to see what the feedback is. So kind of try to place yourself, but I'm sure your listeners do know this, in the right spots, in the right areas. Punkt.
Yeah. These are the people that decide stuff.
Yeah.
And they normally change out every 4th year, but that's democracy. You need to push the buttons where you can. That's also what the Commission is pushing for, that we all do, that when we engage ourselves in these things, because you need a policy movement in many of the things that the Commission is pushing for, sustainability or gender balance, whatever. You need, more people, young people doing vocational training courses. Whatever. It's something where you often need a political torchbearer that makes sure that framework conditions are adjusted to facilitate what you're trying to do in the project. So, we need to move on because we have it's not too long out there yet, but we do have some things we still need to cover. So now we sort of ran through the two main blocks here, right? Now we need to talk a little bit about. Now we talked about synergies, and we discussed the pre-talk here if we should just keep it part of the discussion we just went through, or keep it as a specific block. But we gave it a specific block. Now, there's obviously synergies continuously between the two of these, but so complementarities, Maëla?
Yes, well, I think it's complementary because, the project always aim to improve society, no matter the topic. So in the sense, it's very important to communicate to the general public and disseminate at the same time. And it's complementary because I think I already mentioned it, but it's very difficult, I think, to have good dissemination if you don't have good communication.
Yeah.
If you have a book, let's say, well, you need to communicate about the book. Otherwise, people don't know it's existing. If you have a conference, you need to communicate about the conference. Otherwise, nobody will come. And same about the website. So I think it's complementary, because if you use communication in a good way, then you will be able to disseminate the results.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not possible to have one without the others. The two are very important. And the same, if you communicate but you don't disseminate the results, then, well, of course, it's nice for people to see you where, for example, you went to Poland and you had a nice time, a nice workshop. But if there is nothing from them to take from it, then they won't probably, see your next communication about workshop in Vilnius, let's say. So for me, it's very complementary in the sense that they need to go hand by hand and to serve each other in a way. You need to use communication for dissemination. You need to use dissemination for communication.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah, it's like this. If you make good communication about, nobody's going to come to a conference if you don't make a good communication around it. So nobody will be there for your dissemination activities. And the other way around, if you make good communication about your conference, but you have empty dissemination, nobody's going to come back. It's the same with everything. A podcast, you can promote a podcast very well, but if the content is shite, nobody's going to listen to it. So it's and you can make this analogy for everything in the related to what we've been going through here. So so you make them play together all the time, right? So it goes hand in hand. Organization, collaboration, and formalities. We've been talking a lot about the different things to do and the different elements and different layers and so on and so forth. But now what you are doing, the two of you are project coordinators and you're communication coordinators in projects now. So a lot of organization here. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about organizing yourself and collaboration in the partner group, deliverables and formalities? And so can you share a little bit about how you approach this?
Let's talk about reporting maybe first, because I think that's an element that everybody has to do. That's for sure. Depending on the project, of course, and depending on the project scheme, let's say the project funding. I have different setups. For Win for SMEs, we have a yearly report. When it comes to dissemination, it's a fairly simple sheet, to be honest with you, because we need to kind of keep it simple with certain target groups specified in a drop down. What I'm interested in, and this is also something that for sure many of your listeners know, is of course the target group, what happened, but I am also interested in any kind of statistical indicators. So if it's a social media post, I'd like to know what the engagement was. If it's an event, I'd like to know how many people came. And if you have access to this information, and I'm not saying that you always have access to this information, of course, but this is something that is helpful for me. This is something that can later on in the course of a project, in the reporting process, also give you a very good overview on impact. So this is something that I always try to include and encourage the partner consortium to do. Now, with this being said, the challenge here is that, first of all, you might not have access to this information due to a couple of reasons. One of them being that in certain institutions, you also have separate departments responsible for communication. So you can kind of, it's kind of another step that you have to take, right, to get that data. So this is something that I organize within my project consortium as well. For Win for SMEs, we have also yearly reports on any kind of networking activities, including what we mentioned before. So any kind of contacts with governance, admin policy. So this is something that I also like to take a look at, see where we are. and then do just transnational exchange on how we can maybe do this better as a consortium, or how we can do it different, not necessarily better, but different as a consortium. So that's one. Something that's very kind of light, I guess, as in it's not very formal. It's been working for me. Maybe I have to take a look into. No, it's working. It's good, so I don't need to make it better. Is what I'm interested in is, instead of having a report once per year, which I do anyway, I also like to encourage the partner consortium to send me information, let me know about what's going on if they're going to a massive event and they're going to represent, for example, Win for SMEs. Let me know. I can do a post on this on LinkedIn, or maybe even better, you do a post on this on LinkedIn and then tag me, and then I can reshare. So this is something that's been working in a very light manner, really, really nice. I've received information about events in Hungary, Skillman, for example, as well. Gunnar from eTech took part. We're also associated from Win for SMEs at Skillman. He sent me a video. I cropped it. So these kind of things, they're informal. I ask for partners to do this. Obviously, they have a lot to do, and it's been working. And I like this because then I can reshare it as well with, for example, the community of practice, and then that kind of gets the ball rolling even more. Not always, of course, but sometimes. So that was about reporting.
That you covered everything. Deliverables, yeah. So you something about getting things out there, right?
Yeah.
And collaboration with the partner group.
Well,
and how to organize yourself.
Yeah. So this is basically that. So we're talking about reporting, deliverables, indicators, collaboration as well, in the sense of, this is good as well, maybe. So this is also very specific to our project, because it's centers of vocational excellence, where we have different institutions within a center of vocational excellence, national institutions. But I've seen as well that due to the fact that they collaborate on activities and also, develop networks to build up the center of vocational excellence, they meet up. Then they do small reports, for example, of their meetings, which then they talk about what they're collaborating on, how they're developing their center of vocational excellence, which additional actors, for example, they're talking to then sign a letter of intent, of collaboration, memorandum of understanding. And then they send me this information. Boom. Once again, we have collaboration, we have visibility. We can go ahead and give this or put this onto our social media. And then hopefully suck that into our website once that API from social media to our Win for SMEs website is active. So, punkt, I think, for now.
Yeah. Maëla?
Yeah, I think it's maybe the risk when you are the project coordinator, the lead partner, is that you don't have that much time, especially when you are, for example, running a workshop. Or let's say train the trainer. You are presenting most of the time, you are organizing. So you don't have time, to take pictures, to take some notes. And I think that's very important. We are coming back again to involve all partners, but that's, they do it, and that it's a reflex that in the end, every time you have an event, someone has something to deliver for some content. And I have to say, well, for the Synergies project, for example, it worked also very well. We have the partners, they made some activities. For example, the Lithuanian partners, they invited the Austrian partners to come. They did a workshop together, and then they made a video out of it. It was not in the grant agreement. It was not a request from the lead partner. They just made it because they know it's, valuable content for them. And then, well, it's good for everyone. So it must be... I think everyone needs to feel involved and to see that it's valuable for all partners. Again, I will repeat myself, but I really like this bottom-up approach of the Povi Water project, because you can't have dissemination meetings with 40 or 50 people. I think it would be very, very difficult. So it's nice to have this kind of regional captain, and then they can, tell their team, their COVID. Okay, this is what was discussed in the dissemination meeting, and this is relevant for us, or this is what I'm going to present in the meeting. But I think this kind of approach is very valuable. And I think it's also important to know what the others are doing, because there is also the risk otherwise that, for example, let's say the Czech partners are organizing a great activity, and you're thinking, oh, well, if I had known, I would have been able to communicate about it, to invite people from my network, but I didn't know. And when you have a big consortium, and it's usually the case with COVID projects, it's important, I think, also that, in these meetings, people come together and have a better overview of what's happening in the different regions, in the different COVIs.
Also, as a piece of advice or an optional element of any kind of workshops, just to focus on that collaboration area, maybe within the partner consortium, which then spreads right further down the line. Maybe it's a good idea to designate. I'm not talking about, I don't know, a 3-hour block. Of course, you can do that if you have the capacity to do that, but designate a little bit of time to this during the workshop. Because it can get collaboration going, but it can also really, a lot of creative things can stem out of this kind of activity, whether it's the aforementioned, pitch preparation, whether it's after that presenting or coming up with ideas where you can go within your country to talk about, to spread the word, to disseminate, to communicate, or whether it's for coming up with a simple story or a slogan for that matter. It kind of gets the creative juices flowing, let's say, and it gets the collaborative juices flowing. So that's an idea, to try to designate a smaller part maybe of the workshop, or a bigger part, as I said, depending on your capacities.
Yeah, and you might even allocate some of your budget to an external consultant. Yeah, communication expert.
Yeah, if you have
if you know one, or if some of the partners know a good one, because you have lots of people out there that wouldn't understand the European project context. But if you have someone who knows this, that you can take, that's good to take someone in to facilitate a workshop on this, on how to do it in the group and how to organize ourselves. Because it's always the thing. So what I've been thinking about while you've been talking is that the organization itself, you have the strategy that you develop. Yeah. That's sort of your organization, because also there, the coordinator would typically do this in collaboration with the dissemination communication work package lead, right? Develop that plan with input from the partners. But that's your theoretical and organizational foundation. Then in reality, when you collaborate with the partners, that requires all that you've been putting meat on the bone here, because you need to put your creativity into that, and how to work with the partners, and how to kick the partners over the shin bones that don't do anything, because that's also part of being in a project. You have the ones that don't do anything on dissemination communication. They never like stuff. They don't send you anything. They don't develop content, whatever for this. So that also you need to sort of have as part of, that's a part of being that pushing things forward. You have the ones that do nice stuff, like you've been mentioning here. Then you have the ones that need to push. Come on, guys. And it all adds up to what you need to do, all of you. And that's going to be your hook and your handle to kick that shin bone. Is we need to deliver. We have deliverables, and you need to hand in, because then we're all going, especially lump sum projects, it's going to hit us all if you don't deliver here, or potentially hit us all. So,
something also that just crossed my mind, but there is also communication towards the partners, and I think it's also very, very important. If I take again the example of PUVI, we have these impact stories, and not all partners, not all 22 partners took part in the impact stories. The regional captain responsible for finding the participants, making the videos, etc. And what we did in South Africa in the project workshop, we took 1 hour of our time just to show these impact stories in a dynamic way to the partners, because we also wanted them to see, look, you have been doing a lot of things, you are putting many efforts in your work, and this is the result. This is a student, talking about the activity, what he learned, why he loved it. And well, I think it's also very important to communicate to the partners and show them, what you're doing has a big impact out there. Well, in this project, it's part of a grant agreement. It's a work package. We have this impact evaluation, but I think it's very nice also to take this time with the partners to see the concrete effects, it has on the people when you are organizing activities, so that they have also a feedback.
Yeah, and for that, now I mentioned the ones you have to kick over the shin bones, but then you have the ones that actually would like to, but they don't know how to. That's a different element here. There you need to facilitate and give them some tools and ideas. And their workshop like this, so half of a day of a consortium, a couple of days consortium meeting where you focus on this would sort of help these people how to deal with this.
Yeah, I think this is something that Maëla mentioned as well at the very beginning, that, for example, the IGF prepared and led. I unfortunately didn't have an opportunity to take part in those workshops, but they actually prepared a workshop. Maëla, was it on the use of Canva or was it on the use of AI in...
3 of them, yes. Use of AI, and the third one was how to use AI, but Canva, how to make a Canva video and how you can use AI.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an example. You do have people, of course, in partner consortiums which need a little bit of a push when it comes to this. Maybe they don't want to do self-exploration on their own when it comes to AI tools or Canva. And in this case, yeah, it's fantastic if somebody steps up, whether it's the lead partner, of course, or whether it's a person from the partner consortium that's very experienced. It's fantastic, right? To share. Sharing is caring, as we said before. Sharing is caring.
Mm-hmm. That note, we're almost done now. Came through this. Now we need to talk a little bit about do's and don'ts, recommendations, before we end up with the toughest challenge. So do's and don'ts, short.
Well, go ahead.
So the do's I already mentioned. I designate a short period in workshops for this. That's for sure. The do's that I would think about incorporating is really trying to take a look at how project partners define the pitch of the project at the beginning, middle, and end term. I think that's a very interesting activity to do. The don'ts, and it's going to be also one of the biggest challenges for sure, so I'm going to repeat myself, is not to overload people with 3,000, or that's just from the top of my head, channels, numbers, communication elements. It's difficult though. That's a big challenge for me as well personally, because we can talk about it when the challenge comes. But as hard and as difficult as it may seem, try to keep it as simple as possible, because people work in multiple projects. Every project has their own setup. And then you yourself know, you have Dashlane with 5,000 in logins, passwords. So that's a don't. Give it. Try to simplify.
They have a job.
Yeah.
And the project is it's part of what they do. They have other responsibilities than EU projects.
Exactly. So, that's it. That's sometimes maybe if you're a lead partner that focuses only on leading projects, that you need to keep that in mind. For most of these institutions, taking part in a project is not the main role of this particular institution. It's a certain element, So, and plus they have, as you said, Niels, let's say even up to 4 or 5, whatever, amounts. So of different projects at the same time. So don't overload. I'd say localized websites. That's something that is good to be looking into. Big do from my end is try to find opportunities, events, any kind of networking, but not any. That's the thing. Quality, right? As we said, try to get in there, try to see what kind of promotional offers they have, whether it's award or not, competitions, because that will lead you to dissemination at a certain point of time. And keep track. Keep track of what you're doing, because if you do something in 2024 and you have a report in 2025, then you're going to forget it. Yeah. So keep track. Yeah, that's it.
Maëla?
Well, my first don't, I think, would be don't put communication and dissemination aside thinking, okay, well, I don't have time for it now, I will do it later. because I think it's very time consuming, but at the same time it needs to be done, and it's an important part of the project. We talked about it before, but involve all partners. So don't think, okay, the project coordinator is going to do it on its own. No. Yes, having a clear plan. I think with all events also coming, it's very important. If you're using, for example, Instagram, you need to post regularly. So it's something also you can plan in advance. You can say, okay, we already know for 2025, we have these events. And then you have already content that is, designed, and you don't have to think every week, okay, what am I going to publish on Tuesday? I don't have anything. So that's something also important. About the languages, I would say, yes, communicate, disseminate in English, but don't forget also about the other languages. I think it's very important also to use the languages of the project partners. It reaches to other people, and it should not be forgotten. And yeah, maybe my last point will be also keep communicating and disseminating the project results after the project. We have very nice example now that the socio-economic project ended in October 2024. And this week, actually, yes, one of our Polish partners, Marek Łukasik, was invited to the radio, to the local radio in Słupsk. And he talked about the project, about what they have been doing with the university in Słupsk. And I think it's, it's very nice to see, because the project ended, but it's still very much alive. And the partners keep talking about it. So it's, I think it shows that it worked.
Yeah. Those are the successful ones. You have all projects, each project has its own personality, so to say. And it's, It's good if it lives on. Thanks. The Grand. Now we're going to the segment I have in all my episodes, the toughest challenge. So I obviously made a mistake sending this out. This is from a former episode, so challenge in relation to gender and funding. I already recorded that episode. Of course, it's not gender we're going to talk about here.
Yeah.
Confusing for you guys, you ladies. Of course, you need to share about the toughest challenge in relation to implementing, rolling out communication dissemination. So hit us.
I'm going to talk about a technical challenge from my end. It's actually in relation to partner consortium communication. So, if you have a company, let's say, usually a company, even if it's 800 people, they have certain elements when it comes to, or certain applications that they use for any kind of communication reporting, whether it's, I don't know, for project management, Asana, or whether it's another element, another application. There's loads of them nowadays. When you work in a project consortium consisting of, for example, 20 project partners, you can try your best, and that's what we're doing, of course, or at least that's what I'm trying to do, to find the best ways of collecting information, of communicating, of finding ways to get the information from the partner consortium. But you have to remember, it's just as we said, not only are these projects a kind of like a sideline job for individuals, but every single individual works in a different organization with their own communication legal rules. Some use Microsoft, some use Google, some can't use Google, some can use this, some can't use that, some use web-based, some don't, and finding a way to come to an agreement on all of this, because it's interesting. It's not about implementing a project strategy, but it's about communicating. Essentially, this is something that I'm constantly trying to fine tune, and I honestly find this to be a challenge for me, because if you have 20 project partners and 5 use this, 6 can't use this, 2 can use this, then you need to try to find an option that's somehow optimal for everybody. So this is a challenge.
Maëla?
Well, I absolutely agree with Anna Maria, but also for me, I think maybe also it's important to know I arrived in the socio-economic project in March 2024. It ended in October 2024. So you see, I had 7 months, let's say 8 months in the project. And when I arrived and I took over this project coordinator task, for me, it was very difficult, I would say, to find the time to communicate. And that's why I say also don't put it aside and think I will do it later. Because for me, I think when I arrived, you have plenty of other things to do. But people are not going to wait for you, to do other things and say, okay, I will come back in 5 months and then I will make a post about the project. No, people are not waiting for you. So I think that has been a big challenge for me, just to take this time and I say, okay, no, don't do it later, do it now, because it needs to be done now.
So the planning and the organization
Yes.
of regularity, frequency.
Don't put it on the back burner. Don't put it on the back burner.
And that is, I think many listeners out there will sit and nod and say, look, yes, I did this, or I am maybe doing it as we speak, putting it there, right there in the back. I'm going to do it later, because especially content partners, where it's not their main activity, they roll out with the interest they have, technology or innovation process, whatever, in the project that they're doing. It's just, we'll do a LinkedIn post. It's I'll do it later.
Yeah.
It's All right. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you.
I just have to land the plane, as you know the drill. So, dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to the end. I hope that this has been instructive and informative for you, everybody out there who are involved in implementing projects. If you find this interesting, of course, you go to the implementation series, where you have more episodes on different elements of implementing an EU-funded project. Further, go to the platform. There's so much content now on how to write proposals. You have debates on the AI, the LLMs, the chatbots, how to use them. You have for coordinators, you have funding schemes, all kinds of funding. There's so much stuff. There's so much in there. And I've categorized things so you can click on the little tabs and you'll find episodes related to specifically your interest there. So that's that. And while you're there and you think, oh, this is so cool, go down and subscribe to my email list, because that's how you support small independent podcasters like myself. So register there, subscribe, and you'll get an email every time I release a podcast episode. It's that. Finally, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where the fun happens. That's where the flow is. I have a page, The Grand. Go connect yourself with that and like that. And of course, connect with me, Niels Tudor Winther, if you're not already. That's where I have all my flow of communication marketing, but it's also where I like people's things and share. And it's also where I pick up a lot of my guests. So if you want to be a guest on the show, don't be shy. Reach out. That's it. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Niels. Thank you for having us.
It's been a pleasure. It's not the last time. You've become regulars. So we will stay in touch. And of course, Anna, we will continue doing the Wait for SMEs recording, even though I changed position. But promised you that.
Yes,
Maëla,
thank you.
There will definitely be things where you will be guest as well. So see you guys.
It's my pleasure. Thank
now
you.
let's say goodbye to dear listeners. Bye.
Goodbye, dear listeners. Bye-bye.
See you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grand. All the Grand episodes have their own site on the Grand website. You will find the link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Anna's and Maëla's personal LinkedIn sites and a link to Hanse-Parlament's website. Further, there's a link to the Win for SME's LinkedIn profile referred to in these episodes, and a link to some information from the European Commission related to this. And of course, a link to the rest of the episodes in the implementation series. Finally, there's a link to my communication short series with complimentary input for anyone working with EU R&D funding. Next week, it is Shorts Week with exactly the final episodes in that communication short series, including finding the winner of the Grand Mock with the best LinkedIn comment. You can look forward to that.